Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make this real quick since we have a full panel up here and everyone has to have access to the time. You know, prior to the time the first reports came out, I have to tell you, and I'll address this to General Hayden and to Ambassador Edelman because I know you guys better than the other two. Prior to that time, I just thought the mere concept of negotiating with terrorism is not a good idea. But then there are two things that came out that I've realized that when I go back to Oklahoma and talk to real people, there are problems with this. And one is the lack of verification. The other is the billions of dollars going to terrorists. And the last person I would expect to say what she said were the words that came from Susan Rice. She's the one that said things that were not true about Benghazi on the Sunday programs. And when she came out and said, I think this is with Wolf Blitzer, and this is a quote, she said, we should expect that some portion of that money would go to the Iranian military and could potentially be used for the kinds of bad behavior that we have seen in the region up until now. Now, I really believe, building on that this could fund the terrorism efforts through Hamas in Palestine, Bashar al-Assad in Syria, Yemen, and the rest of the places. The Pentagon currently estimates that Iran provides approximately $200 million a year to Hezbollah alone. Now, on that thing, I asked the two of them, what am I overlooking? I mean, isn't that pretty obvious just on its face that that this would expand the use of money going to terrorists? General Hayden?
Very quickly, Senator. Of course it will. No, the intelligence community put out an estimate that was, I think, intentionally leaked, that most of the money would not go. But, you know, most is like 51 cents on the dollar. Mm-hmm. So that leaves an awful lot of headroom for that estimate. Sure. Beyond that, right, let's just imagine a world in which none of it goes. Mm-hmm. We realize that you've created a situation for the Iranian regime where they can do guns and butter, that there is no pressure internally on the regime for continuing their current behavior, which is not the case today before the sanctions are lifted. But I agree, it's even worse than guns and butter. It's more guns and butter.
Okay, I thought, Ambassador?
I agree, Senator Inhofe, with what General Hayden just said, and I would add one other factor here, which is the fact that the Iranians at the last minute in the negotiations suggested that the price for getting the deal was to lift the conventional arms embargo and the embargo on ballistic missiles in the UN Security Council, which my colleague earlier talked about, and that it was supported vigorously by Russia. I don't think, as I might have said in my earlier career as a Sovietologist, was by accident, comrade. This happened because the Iranians intend to use with this windfall, to use it to purchase advanced conventional systems with anti-access area denial elements to it, and the people who are going to sell it to them are going to be Russia and China.
Okay, very good answers. The second thing that I looked at was, you know, if you're talking about 5 days, 10 days, 24 days, or whatever length of time, if you have to give a site warning that an inspection is going to take place, that immediately sent up a red flag to me. Then we had the statements by the deputy director, Haynonen, who said that a 24-day adjudicated timeline reduces detection possibilities. He goes on to talk about what all can be done. Now, during the last hearing, Senator Fisher pursued it a little bit with Secretary Moniz and talked about the timeline, and I got a little confused there because first of all, you start off with the 24 days. We know how that's broken out. However, if Iran believes that India or all of the, are not meeting their commitments, it could refer the issue to the Joint Commission for 15 days, then the Ministers of Foreign Affairs for another 15 days. Now, that's a total of 54 days. Now, I don't know how much further it could go out. Do you agree that could happen in terms of something that would have to be verified?
I'm aware of the provisions that you've talked about with regard to referring issues to the Joint Commission. Like any agreement, we're going to find out once it's actually in place how it actually will work. But I think it is possible that you could get a longer than 24-day period from the request to an inspection. I think
that
that's
adds
perfectly plausible.
up to some 56 days. General Hayden, do you think that they would be able to cover up a lot of stuff in 24 days, leave alone 56 days?
Well, more time is better. And again, I think we all agree.
Okay.
This is not going to be a sprint out to a new Natan somewhere. There will be cheating, but it will be incremental, and that'll be the kind that will be very, very difficult. And Senator, one additional thing, in addition to your adding on to the back end, there's some fuzziness at the front end before the 24-day clock starts, because there's a dialogue between the IAEA and the Iranians about what it is to identify what really the issues are about which facilities.